So Fated's been weird. We've been hearing a little bit about the Fated season. I can give you a couple anecdotes. So we actually talked about this a little bit on the podcast yesterday. So we had to find a few statements to kind of realize what they're trying to do in this season. I have one from Holly Longsdale, which is in Modern World. Actually, I can pull it up on the screen here. So WoW Roadmap 2024. It's the first post, and it's like 3 paragraphs down. Here it is. In Modern World of Warcraft, blah, 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 blah. We'll be wrapping up this. Dragonflight Season 4 will revisit Dragonflight's dungeons and raids. Again, this was back in, like, November, I think. Along with outdoor content featuring updated... So there's new outdoor content, which wasn't true last Fated, featuring updated rewards and a few new twists. And then, blah, 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 we'll do alpha and beta after that. Okay, so... They're kind of saying they're going to go do rotate raids again, which is kind of the thing that a lot of people are like, I don't want this. Like, I have not heard a single section of the community be like, I can't wait to do Mythic Razageth again. I want to do Mythic Sarkareth. No one wants to go back and do this stuff. It's like, it's just not what people want. They don't want that this patch. So, yeah, Dathia. Just, nah, don't want to do that. I think it was like a little bit more acceptable last expansion because going back to Castle Nathria was sick because Castle Nathria was sick. This expansion didn't really have a raid like that. Like, the closest raid to that is this one, and it's like, we're already here, you know? So I don't think that is wanted, and I also just think that that concept is just not a good thing going forward. But yeah, they said that. And then I've noticed some things recently where, I'll give you another thing. So Ian Hazakost in an interview said this. We're bringing forward pretty much everything from the Shadowlands Season 4, except new raid affixes, or except the new raid affixes and the mechanical modifiers. So they're saying there isn't going to be affixes in the raid, in an interview. And he also says, so it's really just more, let's bring all 3 raids back in rotation. Let's bring all of the Dragonflight dungeons back as a Dragonflight Seasonal Mythic Plus pool and close out the season that way. Okay, so it's like kind of letting you know, it's kind of what you already think. It's Dragonflight dungeons for Mythic Plus. It is rotating raids and without affixes. But they need to make you more powerful because no one just wants to go through progression in these raids again. Like, they should really make you... But this is a whole other conversation. But the reason why I'm saying all this is recently Towley alluded to on his stream that they wouldn't be rotating raids. Now, this is not insignificant. Towley knows more people at Blizzard and gets leaked more info than anyone by far. And he has a very special quality of not even kind of giving a fuck. And he'll just say it. So I'm wondering if we haven't heard anything yet. I wonder if they heard the negative feedback, and it has been overwhelmingly negative about rotating raids. I wonder if they pivoted. And if they pivoted, then I wonder what it actually is going to look like. And I hope they did, because again, if I've been holding out hope for Fated, I hope they cook. They came up with really good things. If you forget the actual gameplay loop of last Fated, they came up with the upgrade system that basically exists now. We tried out some dinars. We tried rotating dungeons. Like, it was really successful in the future of WoW, not as much the gameplay of that current content. I hope they do that again. I think whatever the post today is, it sounds like they did a little bit of that, although I don't think this is the full Mythic Plus post. I think this is basically just a post about whatever they did with the key level system, from what I've seen. I haven't read it yet, just from the responses I saw on Twitter. But man, I really think people are going to be really unhappy if it's just like rotating raids again, just straight up. And also, I hope they give us some more power. I hope, like, I don't know, like, just give us corruption. Like, this is the end of the expansion. Give us some fucking crazy shit where we're on crack and make the raids not some super, super hard reprogressing thing. Like, let us just fucking blast the content and actually, like, kind of go wild for a little bit. I don't know. I think that would be great. I think the game could use that. In Dragonflight, as well as it, or as good as it was a rebuilding expansion. They were rebuilding core foundational parts of the game, and for the first time in a long time, they weren't working on these systems since the beginning of the expansion. But, like, what you did have happen in a couple of those expansions was you got cool things in the patches. And recently, the Dobby, or Dobby, however you say his name, the nascent guy in that post said that, like, WoW is too predictable. And that is true, right? Like, now that we're in the post borrowed power era, you literally just get raids, Mythic Plus dungeons, and a new zone every patch. It used to be that plus brand new system, like a PoE seasonal almost. Like, we talked about this a lot on the podcast yesterday, which I think just got released a couple minutes ago. Like, I think they can do that. And it's not, and people be like, well, they weren't very good at it. It took too long for those things to be good. True. But you know what's kind of crazy? they got the exact same thing wrong on all of them. Somehow, I don't know how. Accessibility and how you acquired all of those things was exactly what was bad, and they fucked that thing up every single fucking time. They've gotten better at accessibility since they've made these systems. They actually, accessibility and acquirability and all of those things. Acquirability is not a word, but like how you acquire things, that they have been way better at that in Dragonflight, except for the legendaries, actually. But I don't know. I would love to see Season 4 be a little bit more on that path, you know? I've used this paint diagram before, but, you know, if this is the how good the expansion is quality-wise, this line, I don't know why I can just do one line. If this is how good the expansion is quality-wise, and this is how long the expansion has been out, Legion and BFA specifically started out at such monumentally low spots, and then they just got way better throughout the expansion, and they ended in amazing. The end of Legion and the end of BFA, specifically the last patches of each of those, were just fucking insane. They were insane content. Dragonflight started out way, 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 way better than all of those expansions, but it just only got slightly better throughout the expansion. So most of the beginning was way better. Most of the expansion was better, but it didn't really reach this level. So what I'm hoping for is for Dragonflight as a rebuilding expansion, I can take that. I think the game needed it. I think the stuff they added was good. A little bit down on professions, actually, but overall good. But now we're in Season 4. This is where Season 4 starts. Don't you all think we can get a little weird? Don't you all think we can have something like essences or corruption in the game that is not going to continue? And then at least when we go to next expansion, before what it was and why those expansions really struggled is if you were to start this bar graph again, right? And the new expansion comes out. Okay, Legion ends, right? So you lose legendaries, you lose your artifact weapon, you lose the crucible system, you lose the legendaries, you lose everything. And then you get non-tradable, only one tier 1 trade Azerite armor that hasn't been figured out yet, and it takes a whole nother expansion to figure it out. And the worst thing about these borrowed power expansions was not the end of these expansions. Those were great. It was this. This feeling was like, I logged into this new expansion, I paid this money for this new expansion, and this game is significantly less fun than it was to play 2 weeks ago. My character feels like shit. That's bad, right? And I think the whole expansion working like that didn't make sense. All I'm saying is there room at the end of the expansion when the least amount of people are playing the game to just get a little weird with it? That's all. Because worst case scenario, yeah, next expansion, you're going to have to come down a little bit, but it's this. It's not this, you know? I just think it'd be interesting. Like when they announced the tier set voting, I was kind of convinced they weren't going to do something like this because they were like, hey, everybody, vote on your best tier set. And there was a few classes where it was kind of controversial. Mainly the classes with spec trees where you can choose multiple builds. Like I know Ellie really wanted another tier set because like the current one is like better, but it forces you into playing this fire build where like there's a previous set where you could play both. Same thing with Enhance. Like Enhance currently plays Elemental, and then people who wanted to play like the Storm version of Enhance wanted a different tier set, but there's tier sets that allowed you to play both, right? So what I thought would be really cool is imagine you start with the patch and all tier sets are available, but you can put them on like, you know, certain pieces of gear. And just like Corruption, every week, let's just say it costs 2 points to put on a 2-piece and 4 points to put on a 4-piece. And you start the season with 6 points. And just to make this as simple as possible, and every week you gain 2 more points. So by the time you're in the second month, you literally have multiple 4-pieces and multiple 2-pieces from this expansion equipped. Your character's going to be fucking flying, right? You're just owning. And that way you don't have to choose between pieces. You can kind of play whatever you want. It's a little crazy, and maybe those things wouldn't synergize well with each other, but it's just getting a little weird and trying a way to be more powerful for a bit. And maybe 1 week mages are sick because their old 2 4-pieces are great, but it turns out when it's only 2 4-pieces and a 2-piece, then this class is better, and it would kind of just constantly be changing every week. And yeah, it's not going to be the most balanced thing ever. It'd probably be kind of wacky, but it's going to be over in like 2 months, and people are on to alpha and beta, and who fucking cares, right? So I don't know if it's exactly something like that, but that is what I'm talking about with this extra little thing. I just hope they give us something that makes the game more fun and it allows our power. Specifically, I think our power needs to scale out of control. If Blizzard releases rotating raids, and it's just another season of getting your gear from different places, and you just get more powerful, and over time the raids become easier, I think people are going to hate raiding so much in this patch. What needs to happen is we need to gain a ton of power really fast and absolutely smoke these fucking raids. Who cares if people are clearing these things easily? people do not want to reprogress all 3 of these raids again. So that could be a tuning thing, or I think it could be a cool time to add some power that kind of nerfs this thing by default by making you fucking blast, right? So, and Mythic Plus, like, yeah, like Mythic Plus levels are going to go up a lot through the season. But again, it's like, this is like a fucking end of expansion meme season, right? Like, I just think there's some world. I think there's a world where borrowed power works in a short seasonal format. Like, for example, I think it worked. I think the stuff from the beginning to the end of those expansions did not work. It took too long for them to be good. But the things they added in the seasons was, 1, not as predictable, and 2, actually ended up being really, really good for the game. And I don't think in like a PoE sense they could have kept all of those. Like, just imagine a new player starting WoW today and they have to get their artifact weapon leveled up, get some Azerite armor, make sure you have the right Legion legendaries and Shadow legendaries. You can get one of each, and then, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I guess you could argue just like a PoE season, you wouldn't. I don't think PoE keeps all of their seasonals, just the stuff that's really sick, right? And they find some way to bake it into the game. But, you know, I think innovating more is good, and the only real argument against them trying to add more stuff is just that in the past they weren't good enough to make enough good things. It just took too long for every one of those things to get good. But what was bad about them? It was the same fucking thing. Literally just a acquisition. That's it. That's what they fucked up every time. So just don't fuck that up. And I think if you're trying to use the end of an expansion to experiment, I think experimenting with that is really fun. And I think it would be cool. Me, personally, my opinion, I could be wrong, but I think if this patch is just like the same gear progression, everyone's progressing through these raids, rotating every week, which we don't even know if that's the case yet, but it seems like that's what it is. I just think people are going to fucking hate it. I think it's going to be really, really disliked. And I think if you're going to do an end of expansion thing, I think it needs to be more creative, and I think you need to blast off more. That's it. Anyways, that's just my tangent on season 4. So saying all that, we may have gotten our first look today at what Blizzard actually is cooking for the upcoming season. From what I can tell, I haven't read this yet, but from what I can tell from some Twitter responses I read on the way home today, it sounds like they didn't do a lot or as much as people wanted to, but I also don't know if this is the definitive Mythic Plus post for Season 4, and I don't think it is, because people are speculating as to the dungeon pool, even though we've pretty much had it confirmed that it's just the Dragonflight dungeons. But the Season 4 changes applying to all 8 of the Dragonflight dungeons of, like, Heroic to Mythic 0 or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean those are the Mythic Plus dungeons. Oh, they confirmed it in a comment? Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, though, they still haven't, like, made a post officially announcing how it's going to work, so I don't know. If people are like, this isn't enough information for me, this isn't as much as I wanted them to cook on affixes and maybe how the keystone system works. I don't think this post was that. If that is going to exist and they're going to clarify what they want to try in this patch, it wasn't intended to be in this post, and it will just be in another post. I don't think this is the Mythic Plus post for Season 4, but we'll find out. So let's read it. So Dragonflight Season 4 brings in a variety of changes, including new adjustments to dungeons, their progression and rewards in the player feedback loop. As part of the ongoing development in Dragonflight, the development team identified 3 issues to address based on community feedback regarding the dungeon system as it is. Heroic dungeons are barely distinct from normal dungeons at max level. That's true. This doesn't apply to us as much, because, like, when was the last time most of you who play WoW consistently have done a heroic... Like, you just don't interact with this content, right? There's just other stuff to do. But a lot of people do. And that distinction mostly only matters during a few days after players first reach max level. True. Mythic 0 dungeons. Yeah, it is funny that they are referred to by everyone in the community as Mythic Zeros, even though I don't think anything in the game has ever called them that, but I mean, it makes sense. Mythic 0 dungeons rapidly lose relevance a few weeks into an expansion. Correct. Once the Mythic Plus season starts, with occasional exceptions for the weekly event quest. True, they don't serve any purpose. True. I think people did it for, like, some achievements or, like, mounts and stuff in, like, previous expansions, but you could probably do that on any... I don't know. Let's see. The only truly endgame dungeon mode, Mythic Plus, currently revolves around a timer. This means that, other than new mega dungeons, there isn't really a place for endgame players who enjoy a more methodical dungeon pacing and gameplay. This is so much more important than a lot of you guys think. This is actually... I think people just have an aversion to timers. Like, you can be doing a hard dungeon and they don't really care how long it takes. And even if they will always complete the dungeon in under the timer, the fact that the timer is there, just some people just don't like it. In fact, I remember when I was playing Final Fantasy for a bit, I remember bringing up in that game, like, would you guys like to have some extra PvE content with some Mythic Plus, whether you queue into it or not? And the very main thing that all of them pushed against was we would not want to be on a timer. Even though they speedrun the fuck out of those dungeons all the time in that game, it wasn't the queue system or the looking for group system or the toxicity or anything. The number one complaint, which surprised me, was I don't want to be on a timer, right? So even if, like you just said in chat, 98% of all dungeons below plus 10 are in time, even if that's true, you cannot deny that the people who are actually doing those dungeons hate the fact that there's a timer on them. It's just true. Like, and I don't feel that way, but a lot of fucking people do. So them removing the timer, even if it changes nothing, will make a lot of people happy. So I think this is and you guys maybe have friends and you have heard something like that and it's blown your mind. They're like, yeah, I don't know, I just don't like the time thing. It's true, man. People just want to do, they don't like the timer. Okay, yeah, you guys are gonna do the whole bit where you don't have friends. You guys all have friends. I'm your friend. Look at that, friends. You just made a new friend. Only true. Let's see. Given the rewards, given the combination of 2 underutilized difficulties, and I just created a parasocial relationship. Let's go. I did it in reverse. Like typically streamers struggle with viewers that are parasocial with them, but I am being parasocial with you. So what now? How the turntables. We're restructuring dungeon difficulty and rewards in season 4. Okay. Heroic difficulty and rewards will move up roughly to the current level of Mythic 0. That's really interesting. Let me read more. These dungeons will remain available to queue into via the group finder, though the item level requirement to queue will also go up accordingly. So if this is something that they're doing in Season 4, usually what they do in Season 4 is they're trying to figure out things that make sense for the game overall and would go for it. So, like, how many times are people going to run Mythic Zeros at the beginning of Season 4? Probably very little. But, like, at the beginning of an expansion, queuing for what you used to have to find a pre-made group for in Mythic Zero will actually... people will enjoy that, and you don't need to actually... you don't actually do heroics at the beginning of leveling. Like, the fact that there is normal and heroic at the beginning of an expansion, just as they stated earlier, is like completely redundant. Like, you don't do either of them, you immediately move on from that. I really like this change for beginning of expansion. I think the majority of the player base, again, those opinions of those people are not commonly seen. Like, dude, it's so crazy. The majority of the WoW community doesn't usually have a public facing opinion. You see 2 main opinions on Twitter, and both of them represent a roughly small amount of people or an irrelevant group of people. The small amount of people is the high-end community who are very loud with their concerns all the time, and that resonates all the way through Twitch channels, through Twitter. It's just that community is much more active on those sites. That's the small community with big noise. And then there's the irrelevant community, and the reason I say irrelevant is they're the people who don't play WoW and are not going to play WoW again, even if Blizzard made every single ridiculous change that they suggest. They're never coming back, but they still really want to tell you their opinion on World of Warcraft. Those people, in my opinion, are irrelevant because making any of the decisions for them isn't going to change anything because they're not playing the game anyway. But the actual majority of the game are playing the game. They're not high-end players, and no one is speaking up for them. Or I wouldn't say speaking up for them as much as they're not, they don't really care to have... Like, they just log in and farm their mounts and log off and don't give a fuck. I think that's most people who play WoW. Maybe they, like, hit up LFR or normal at the beginning of the season, but they're just fucking vibing. They're the people with the healthiest relationship to WoW. They're not mad at all the changes, and they just log in and play the game, right? So I think this change is for them, and I think they will love this. Not in Season 4, but I think at the beginning of next expansion, this will be a very welcome change. In fact, it'll be so good that I bet if the beginning of next expansion is really popular, which I assume it will be because BlizzCon was very, very popular talking about the War Within, I think people are going to be like, this is an amazing War Within feature, even though they came up with it in Dragonflight because so few people play Season 4 and so many people play an expansion, as we've seen. I think people will like this. Anyways, I spent too long there. Mythic Zero difficulty and rewards will move up roughly the current level of Mythic Zero difficulty and rewards. So you will still zone in at Mythic Zero. Like, you can set a dungeon to Mythic where you can put in the keystone, but if you don't put in the keystone and you do it, that'll just be a Mythic 8 to 10. This is a bit hand-wavy. Numerically, it's close to a Mythic 10, but not having a timer at all or affixes really offsets that quite a bit. Yeah, affixes and... But, dude, I think I think people will really enjoy that for sure. Okay. The existing Mythic Plus system will pick up where that leaves off, such as the Mythic 5 in Season 4 is roughly equivalent in difficulty, rewards, and Mythic Plus rating awarded to a Mythic 15 today. Okay, so you're just okay, they have a little list here. Here's a visualization of the change. The light blue circles indicate where the affixes appear, going from current world to Mythic 2 and 5. Okay, so Mythic, like the first level of Mythic Plus adds your first affix. A Mythic 4, which should be equal to a 14, is where you get your second affix. And Mythic 10, which previously was a Mythic 20, is actually where you'll get whatever the third affix is. Wait, are there... So it's fortified and then affix, right? So it gets fortified at Mythic 2, it gets first affix at 5, and second affix at 10. So you're only going to see the second affix ever when you're doing 20s. So this is really interesting. I wonder if they're going to... Oh, and 11.0. They're already saying this is what we're doing in the expansion. Okay. Good change. Well, so I think this part is a good change. I don't know if how it works for Mythic Plus changes at all, right? Like, isn't it exact? I mean, I guess if you wanted to farm 16s, you would be doing it with only, like, if they keep the current upgrade system, you know how it's like efficient to farm 17s, I think, at a certain point instead of 20s because they're like a little faster. Like, you'd be doing that farm without a third affix, which is kind of interesting, at least for now. Yeah, you can do crest farming with less affixes. Yeah. I still think there's a lot to be said about affixes in general, but I don't know if that's the last thing we're going to be. Actually, they're kind of letting you know that affixes are staying in the expansion and in Season 4, right? Like, even if we don't get that post, like, they're saying these are when you're getting the affixes. It's not like here's where you're getting these undetermined things we haven't figured out yet, which that's pretty rough. I think if Mythic Plus players want Blizzard to cook anything, it is please rethink I think the affix system does need to be... There's more to this post, I think. Okay, well, like, maybe read... I mean, is there anything more? Or is this all just explaining everything that's already been explained? I think this is just... Oh, they explained how the cap will work a little bit. They show item level. We'll look at the item level. Okay, so I'm going to talk about affixes for a second. Over time, I understand why affixes exist. Like, for example, right now, if you removed all affixes... I know this argument, people don't like this. I think if you removed all affixes, I think people would not like Mythic Plus. Even if you kept the key level, but you removed Fortified, Tyrannical, every affix, and you just did it, I don't think that's a better game mode. I think there is still some, like, you want the dungeons to feel different week to week, but the way that they're approaching it now is not the right way. And I'll give an example. People complain about affixes that are super impactful. They don't usually play the game during that week. Or even, and a lot of this gets attributed to like high Mythic Plus pushers, but even people who are farming 20s for gear or portals or whatever, if they get bolstering Everbloom or one of those other dungeons where it's shitty, like, you're like, man, this sucks. People like affixes. The liked affixes universally across the board are the ones that get closer and closer to not affecting you at all. And when the entire system in the first place was done like Diablo, right? Diablo, you had a greater rift system, and then you had affixes. And the affixes made sense. Like, if you did a Diablo rift and it was kind of something to think about when you got to an elite and they had different affixes. And you didn't want some of them to be super overpowered, but it was good that it was different, right? It made the game better, for sure. But in Mythic Plus, initially, we didn't really know what to think of it. And just over time, it is very clear that people do not look forward to... It's okay to look forward to affixes being different, but the level at which they should hinder you has clearly, the community has shown, that the closer it is to not affecting you at all are the preferred ones. And some of that opinion is coming from high key pushers because they see it as push weeks. They're like, oh, we like the ones that don't do anything. But it's really just not fun. Like, it's just simply not fun to pull a pull you want to pull. That I said pull a lot of times in 1 second. But it's bolstering, and then you just die because the guy's super big. It's just bad. It's too strong. It's too... I don't know. I just think the whole system needs to be redone. Because when you look at it from a very base level, they created affixes for Mythic Plus to challenge you. But it turns out that the player base universally feels like they are annoyed and not incentivized to Mythic Plus the more challenging they are, which means you want to make them all basically do nothing. And if that's the case, then what the fuck are we doing here? What are we doing? Hey, we have this system where we make negative affixes and everyone just wants them to be as easy as possible. What the fuck are we doing? That is, you have to, if you created that concept, have seen where that has gone, you have to be like, the reason we made this in the first place no longer makes sense. We have to look at it differently. So, I mean, you can talk about seasonal affixes, you can talk about positive. There's so many ways to look at it, but what we're doing right now doesn't work. And I feel like the community has been saying that this whole expansion, especially since season 2 onwards. Like, you have to cook a little bit on that, man. Like, this season has to have some of that cooking. Has to happen. Or it has to happen next expansion. Like, you can't just keep... Like, because, like, if the way forward is you just keep removing the ones that are really too hard, like bolstering, and you just keep making them all easier, it's like, why are these even here? I don't know. But at the same time, if you remove them, I genuinely think it would be boring. So, I don't know. Like, I don't have the best solution other than... I definitely wish seasonal affixes still existed. Like, I remember, so we had a Patreon question in our most recent podcast, and it was basically asking if WoW could take some things from PoE. And we had an excellent, I strongly recommend you listen to this. Had an amazing answer. It was mainly aimed towards Dratnos because he plays a lot of PoE. But something that PoE does is, like, when they come up with something great in a season, and seasonal content, which WoW in every game is a very seasonal game in current, even classic, right? You have the chance to come up with cool and unique things. And what do you do when you find cool, unique things? You add them and keep them in the game. If you were creative and innovative and came up with this cool thing, why is it gone? And they keep the things that are good, you know? And I feel like we've missed a little bit from trying some stuff in this game. And like, part of the question was, what if, like, some more cosmetic rewards? What if you were a mage? You know how, like, green fire existed for warlocks? Well, what if, like, you could do something in the game? We'll talk about patches being too predictable. What if you could walk in and have a more cosmetic-based reward system and have your mage spells are, like, some crazy plasma color or something as a fire mage or whatever? Like, you know, like a fireball looks 5 different ways in PoE depending on how you want it, right? Like, I know WoW is super theme-based, but that would be kind of interesting. I think there's a world... People have had the conversation about, like, Mythic Raid being cosmetic only. I think they've approached that the wrong way. I think my final cook on that is... I think starting all of Mythic as a cosmetic is kind of insane, because, like, imagine doing Gnarl Root and being like, you're doing this as a challenge mode difficulty. But I think there's a very clear difficulty curve in WoW. I think Mythic is completely reasonable until you get to the last 2 bosses. Like, for example, if Tindral and Fyrak dropped 0 gear, and Smolderon gave you whatever the best gear was in the game, which is super attainable, I think that solves a ton of problems that are in the game right now. I think if the cosmetics were cool enough, people would absolutely want to do that. And if you're talking about a true separation of difficulty, that is where Mythic becomes... You could basically call the last 2 bosses of Mythic a different difficulty. They truly are. Like, and you would need to find people that want to commit to that, but it's, like, kind of unrealistic that people are doing that for power, you know? But just in general, I think cosmetics in WoW are something underutilized. Like, do you guys remember when Green Fire came out? This might be a boomer thing. I don't remember exactly when it came out, but it was a long time ago. Like, people were so hyped. Like, every single Warlock player and every Warlock alt went to get that shit. It was insane. Why is there not more stuff like that? People would love that. Like, there's a ton of room for people that would farm for really sick cosmetics, for sure. So I just think that would be something they could do. I mean, it's just like Mage Tower. Yeah, but, like, okay, so Mage Tower was a huge banger. How come when we get a patch nowadays, you talk about the game being a little too predictable? And I think that's like a Dragonflight symptom. Like, I think Dragonflight, almost to their mission statement, was like, let's not get too weird with it, and let's just restructure and build the base game. And I think they've done a really good job at that. Except for Professions, I still think has somewhere to go, but I think they've done that. So maybe this is a future thing, but, like, I don't know. When you log in for a patch, it shouldn't just be, okay, if I want a Mythic Plus, that's there. If I want a Raid, that's there. If I want a PvP, there's a new PvP season, and there's a new zone. Like, dude, there should be something like Mage Tower every single season. Like, I just think the players deserve that, and players fucking love that shit. And I wish they just tried to cook a little bit more with every patch. Now, next expansion, we're getting Delves. I'm not super high on Delves, but I've also never tried them. But that's like a literal new endgame path. Like, if you guys remember when they announced Mythic Plus and Legion, that wasn't something that the community was like, all right, well, this is just a new game mode going forward. It was like this niche Legion only thing that became something that obviously had to continue. And then they announced that shit in the next expansion. Delves, aren't they called Delves? What are they called? They're called something like that. Are they literally called Delves? Okay, then why are you guys fucking... Yeah, see, I'm getting insane gaslit, yeah. Like, that is supposed to be something, like, it's literally a vault track. Like, the vault has Delves on there just like it has Raiding and Mythic Plus, right? So, like, maybe that'll be huge, but, like, that could be formulaic too. Okay, new patch, new Delves, new Raid, new Mythic Plus, new... I just wish they made a Brawlers Guild, made a Mage Tower, even tried something Torghasty. I know that's a buzzword. It didn't work out, but like, I wish there was stuff like that they tried in the game. Anyways, kind of a long tangent from where we were right here, but oh, that's kind of what I meant with like the PoE style thing. I wish, that's why I hate seasonal affixes being gone. The best affixes and the best thing they have ever made in Mythic Plus were seasonal affixes. The best seasons that have ever existed in Mythic Plus existed with a great seasonal affix. Some of them were horrible, but I don't see the reason for them creating something awesome and then removing it. I think they should continue doing seasonal affixes. And this is just a cook or whatever, but like, I want to see them trying things like this. Not exactly this, but things like this. Because affixes clearly don't work right now. Try a seasonal affix, and if it sucks, right? But if it is great, we keep it. Somehow you rotate into encrypted because you tried encrypted and it worked. You tried awakened and it worked. You tried prideful. I know some people don't like prideful, but like, hey, just make it stop scaling on a 20 or something. And prideful, anyone who hates prideful instantly likes it. The only reason it was disliked is because at a certain point, you just had to ignore it because it wasn't scaled well. They could change that in fucking 2 seconds. Most people liked it because they didn't scale that high. You could, I don't know, like, I just don't understand why the best things they've made in Mythic Plus, they were just like, all right, well, this is gone forever. Let's go back to this other thing. Like, no, like, I understand why they removed them. Seasonal affixes were created to solve a problem. The problem was you're doing the same dungeons for 2 years. And then they made you get new dungeons every patch. So they're like, we don't need this old thing that solved it. But it was so much more than that. It changed the way you played the dungeons in a very positive way when done right. They actually had roughly a 50% chance of making a great one or bad. Like, almost none of them were mid. Like, they were really bad or really, really good. There's like maybe one you could argue is mid. But like almost all of them were extremely bad or extremely good. And when you come up with really, really good ones, I just don't see why you have to give those up. Even with like, I just think this philosophy should permeate throughout WoW. Tier sets. You're coming with tier sets. Tier sets, every patch are kind of hit or miss. For every class in the game, if you had 3 tier sets this expansion, you probably had like 1 or 2 that was awesome and 1 that kind of stinks. I guess season 1 was kind of weird because they wanted to like make them really basic or whatever, so most of them were not very fun. But hey man, I'm okay with having a bad tier set every now and then because you're trying things, right? But when you come up with a really good one and there's a point on your spec tree that makes no sense and everyone dislikes it, maybe replace that with some talent version of that tier set. And maybe that just makes, like, Havoc Demon Hunters. Do you guys want to lose this current tier forever? Or would it be nice if there was a talent on your spec tree that gave you some kind of CDR on the hunt by using Throwglaive that would synergize with those Throwglaive talents on the side of the thing? It doesn't even have to come from Blade Dance. You don't just have to keep this tier set forever, but like parts of it are fucking amazing and super fun. So like every single class in the game these devs should feel like if they've made something great, you can keep it. That's kind of what the whole class tree or spec tree system is designed for. So I just think they should do that with seasonal affixes. I think they should continue doing that with tier sets and do it more than they said they were going to do it. And I just think in general, they should adopt more of that philosophy. And I know Theme gets away from them on that. Like, a lot of people remember Awakened being really good. They didn't start Awakened by being like, let's come up with this really cool gameplay idea and then form it for this theme. No, it was like N'Zoth and old ancient gods. And it's like, okay, you're going to click these portals and fight these aberrations. And it's like, theme is everything. So like, to them, it's just, I feel like it would be insane to just have Awakened happen in a season where N'Zoth isn't the last boss. But and maybe I'm too far on the other side of this. I'm purely a gameplay only guy. Right? Theme doesn't matter as much to me like that. I just feel like the gameplay would just be so much better than, and I have to feel like that's, if you're to draw the line in the sand at some point, like the actual how fun it is to play the game has to like supersede some of the theme stuff. I know I'm a little biased, but yeah, I don't know. A lot of art changing maybe. Okay. We basically read all this. I mean, this is kind of a nothing burger. At least for people like me, I think the changes where you're actually going to queue heroics at the beginning of the expansion and they're going to matter and be harder, I think that's great. I think that is the most underrated great part of all of this. I think if you're the large, not spoken for WoW player who doesn't really understand why everyone's always screaming about everything, you just kind of log in and have fun, this post was great for you, especially more in the expansion than in Season 4. I think for people who do Mythic Plus professionally, I don't think it changes fucking shit. I don't think it matters. It'll just be the same. You're just going to have to used to things being lower, right? What I will say is I hope, and while I do like this, I think this is overall a W. I'm not like screaming it. I'm not holding up like a W sign from on top of the mountains, right? But I think this is good, and it's really good for people who are not like a lot of us, which is most of the game. But man, I hope this isn't I hope this isn't the last dungeon post about season 4 for sure. I hope there's more coming in this in the direction of just Mythic Plus as a whole. I think if we end up War Within starts, okay, there's a new Keystone level thing, that's fine, but we're just running back these same affixes and no changes. That, like, I think that's a failure in my opinion. There's been enough feedback throughout the expansion to know that the player base is not happy with how affixes work right now, kind of how Keystones work right now. This can't be the last post about dungeon. That's it. There's literally just this. I guess I'm kind of interested in how gearing would work if it changes at all. So, like, to get the Mythic 2 out of 4, it's exactly the same. Okay, so it's exactly the same. Well, not really. They condensed a few of these. So it's 4 and 5 instead of 2, 3, and 4. And this is 6 and 7 with 5, 6 instead of 5, 6, and 7, you know? But I mean, for people who do this mainly for vault purposes, right? You're going to be, this is actually kind of nice. You're going to be running 9s. And if that last affix isn't super impactful or is super impactful, like running 9s instead of 20s would be like super legit. What is it? Let people get mythics from running Mythic Plus at the end of every dungeon? Mythic track gear. I mean, in season 4, fuck it. I'm down. Like, in a regular season, that's definitely bad. But, like, I don't fucking fine. Let you get mythic. Dude, give you mythic track gear in a heroic raid in season 4. I'm hard down. I don't know why season 4 should be challenging or any, like, no one wants this. No one wants to fucking struggle in season 4. Just fucking, if people want to get, I guess, like, people want to get their loot. I don't know. I'm so over it. It's a meme season. Hopefully they do something more fun than just reprogressing the raids and doing Mythic Plus again. But unfortunately, and I don't know this yet, I'll kind of hold out a little bit of hope. It kind of just seems like they're running it back, which is really sad. And it seems like with, again, we don't have all the information yet. It seems like with significantly less cooking than last time currently. Not to doom, but I hope we get more. For sure. Ooh, how do you feel about all the dragonflight dungeons we're getting back? So where's this clarification? Someone said they clarified. I want to read that. Well, they don't explicitly say that we're getting all 8 dragonflight dungeons back in this article, ever. Someone earlier said that they made a post clarifying that we will. It's a different post. That's what I'm asking. I'm just asking where that post is. Dragonflight Season 4 Mythic Plus dungeon rotation includes 8 dragonflight dungeons. Okay, they linked all this. In addition, Blizzard alluded to this. Dragonflight, oh, they just linked the roadmap. This is not a clarification. And again, I think they might have pivoted because I heard someone leak recently that they might not rotate the raids because there was a lot of negative feedback to that. But that's not all Blizzard announced. As new adjustments to dungeons as well as today's blog as well. Does this mean there's tuning or other plans? Dragonflight Season 4 brings a variety of changes, including new adjustments to dungeons, their progression, and rewards. Wait. Oh, so this confirms that they're my dooming earlier, right? Like, this is there just is another dungeon post that they haven't released yet. My only major concern is if, like, Season 4 goes live and this is all they're doing. That would be crazy to me. Wait, it says that's not all Blizzard has announced. Where did they say this? Oh, they're saying Dragonflight Season 4 brings with it a variety of changes, including new adjustments to dungeons, their progression, and rewards. There are not changes to the rewards. How you progress through the key levels is the same, but they didn't talk about rewards at all. I guess you could maybe argue that, like, because they're changing the rewards you get, like, by key level, but I mean, that's just not, like, nothing, basically nothing is changing. Yeah, I'm gonna repeat what I said before. If this is the only Mythic Plus post that they're cooking up, if this is the only Mythic Plus cook in Season 4, then they failed. I strongly believe that. This is good though. This is good. This just is not enough, right? This is a good change, but it's not. Yeah. So there is no... Okay, in today's blog, Blizzard revealed that the difficulty changes are applying to all the Dragonflight dungeons, meaning that the 8 Dragonflight dungeons are part of it. That doesn't really mean that, though. They would apply to those because they're talking about Mythic 0. That doesn't mean that that's what the dungeon pool is at all. But they did say in the roadmap, I think they said... Yeah, here it is. In Modern World of Warcraft, we will revisit Dragonflight's dungeons and raids. So I guess the question is... okay, they're going to do all 8 Dragonflight dungeons. Kind of makes sense. You only got to see them once. You get to see them again. Most of the Dragonflight dungeons are good. Well, no, we actually reviewed them recently. Like, a couple of them are turbo bad, and like a few of them are really, really good. And it's like a normal dungeon season. It's not like BFA tier quality, but it's like a good dungeon season. It's like better than Shadowlands, but like less than BFA. So let's see. The question is whether they're going to do the mega dungeon again, because they've been sticking to 8 dungeons this expansion as like a thing. Like that's the Mythic Plus season is exactly 8 keys. But you could make the same argument where we've only seen every dungeon so far this expansion as we've only seen it once. You've also only seen the mega dungeon as a Mythic Plus dungeon once. I'm not necessarily pushing that they should put the mega dungeon in. I do think that more than 8 keys a season is good, actually. At least for from what I've heard from high key pushers, at least I've heard that in general just more dungeon variety within a season is better than less. That there's probably a point where that stops, but like 10 dungeons would be preferred to 8. I don't know if 12 would be preferred to 8, but 10 would. So maybe they could do exactly 10 with that, or maybe they'll bring back another. I just don't know if we know exactly. Like, I think there's way too much speculation to say that, like, if anyone's extremely confident that the season will only include the 8 dragonflight dungeons, not the mega dungeon, and nothing else, is you're just making shit up. Like, this Wowhead post is doing a lot of speculating. They basically didn't address it at all. So we'll kind of have to wait to see what that is. I really like Galakron's Fall, actually, but I think Rise is a bad enough Mythic Plus dungeon where they can probably skip the Mega Dungeon in Season 4. I don't know. It's pretty bad.